Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of iTie, which is Indie Time Interview Edition, the show where we interview basically video game indie developers. And I am Ninja Guy X, and today we have a special co-host, and we also have 3 developers in total that we're interviewing for a very interesting game. So I'm very excited to learn more about the game, of course. And I hope that you guys are the same. And if you haven't played the game, we'll definitely convince you to get to it. But before we go in, I just want to let you know what's the difference between iTie and every other single interview videos. It's that I wear a tie, of course. Today I am wearing my nice yellow tie. This tie was given to me by Zarina, my good friend, this weekend. So very exciting. It's a video game. Specific, cravat in French, I tie. And here you have kind of like an Atari-looking console. You got a mouse, gaming mouse, some nunchucks from the Wii. So very nice tie, and happy to wear it. All right, without further ado, let me introduce you guys to our co-host first, which is Gladiator. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm live. Hi everyone.
Yeah. So
by the way, Ninja copy with the hat idea. I was the first one. I was the first.
I knew it. I knew he was gonna wear a hat. I said to myself, I had to, get equal with him and get myself a hat. So, but Gladiator, you've been busy, and I do appreciate you taking the time to come here because I know that you had a pretty busy weekend. So, thank you so much.
I have.
Yeah.
But I have to be here. I have to.
Oh yeah. All right, let's stop talking and let's bring in some nice guests here. So. Without further ado, let us introduce you guys to the Joon Shining developer. We've got Al, who is the developer or the main director of the game. We've got Camille, and we've got I'm having a blank. Let me. We've got Camille and Angus. There you go. Welcome, guys, to the stream.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Today we're here to talk about Joon Shining, but I know that you guys have like a very nice profile behind everything. Let's start with that. So we'll start with Al here. So Al, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How you started into going into gaming up until how you became a developer and such.
Yeah, sure. So my background was kind of like a winding route. It wasn't sort of directly going into games. I started off kind of young using this piece of software called Click and Play, which was like one of the earliest forms of being able to make games without coding. But that was kind of when I was about 10 or 12, and then it was a long time until I started actually trying to make games seriously after that. So basically, I was doing electronic music for a while. I did a degree in that, and that led into a PhD research, which was using electronic music technology in the gaming sphere, basically. And so I developed some technology around that, and that was also branching into a commercial game called Palace of Vines, which is on the back burner for the time being, but which is a very excellent musical-based sort of third-person puzzle adventure. And that's when I connected with Angus, who has composed a lot of music for that game. And so we worked very closely in not just him composing the music, but in developing the whole sort of musical puzzle system to sort of make sure all the puzzles are sort of tuned to work with the background music. We spent sort of a few years really deeply developing that, and I pitched that around to publishers for sort of a long time and couldn't get it picked up. So then I'd been prototyping other stuff, so then I just started sort of branching out and exploring developing these prototypes and sort of pitching other prototypes to publishers, and eventually just going, all right, well, for the time being, I'm just gonna self-publish something so that we can get something out there and start to get some traction. That was Joon Shining, that was initially, it was called Mage Drops, and it was going to be a very simple, probably a 6-month project or something. And then it kind of grew and grew into Joon Shining, which turned out to be about a 2-year thing.
Nice. Maze Drop. I like that name actually. That's a good name. I hope that you use it at some point.
I had mixed responses to it. Some people hated it.
Oh man.
I think people weren't fans of it actually.
That's funny. So you and Angus has been, you know each other for quite a while. It's interesting. I was wondering, how you guys met, and that's pretty cool. I really like games that are, focus on music. So, here's hoping so that eventually you get like a good published game out there that is, music oriented. I would love to see that. So since we've talked about Angus a little bit, let's continue with you, Angus. So not only you're a composer, but I'm gonna say that you're kind of like a music engineer, just because you're able to like implement those songs inside a game. So let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started into gaming, and then up until how you became a developer?
Well, I think some of those things you asked about might not be really appropriately applied to me. Definitely not a developer. Al's a developer, and I just made the music. And certainly we worked together in Unity and Wise. So Wise being the music system. So I'm a bit familiar with Wise, but actually mostly what I did in terms of implementing the music and the puzzles thing is conceptual. Is working out how a piece of music could be broken down into pieces that can then be sort of segmented into the puzzles, that when you solve a part of the puzzle, the music sort of comes to life out of that, and it sinks in with the rest of the music, and it becomes a bigger piece of music or something like that, which is like technically that's challenging to do in terms of the Wise and Unity implementation.
Yeah.
Actually, I think one of the biggest like conceptual things about that's complex is that music, when we hear it, it doesn't sound like bits and pieces that are stacked on each other. It's just a thing. It's a piece of music. So breaking, to split up the I don't know, layers of the music or something in a way that a player could actually hear what they're doing. They can hear, oh, now I've made the music different than what it was before or something, without changing what was already there. It's just conceptually quite a complicated thing to do, especially on a really big game like this. I think we had 5 levels. Is that right, Al?
In Palace of Vines, I think there's sort of 5 chapters, and we had all kinds of. Each chapter was split up into different areas, and each area kind of had a different musical concept to it.
Oh boy,
yeah.
It's so detailed, and like it got to the point where I was like, we could almost write a book about how many different concepts we've put into like. Or how all these different puzzles work, and each one works in sort of a different way.
Cool.
But yeah, there was definitely that issue of like sometimes a player would solve a thing that would add another part to the music, and it's like, even though we knew how that worked, we're like, is a player even going to be able to tell that change has resulted from, because it just sounds sort of like a natural change in the music, because you want it to sound natural, but you also want it to sound like an obvious thing that they've done that's changed it. So I think that balance was like very difficult.
I know what you mean, right? Like when you work 2 months on this piece that is super cool, you want the player to actually notice it, because then like, is it really worth that so much work on it? So I totally understand that. Yeah,
especially with video games, because it's right there in the name. It's like all about the visuals, and music is like so secondary a lot of the time in terms of like what the player is thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. And Angus, you mentioned that you don't consider yourself a developer, but anybody basically, well, it's been it's subjective, of course, but a lot of people talk about it. And basically, if you work on a video game, even if you work in the marketing, you're kind of like considered a developer, because you're part of this ecosystem. So I've heard a lot of people consider themselves developers, even if they don't work like in the code or anything like that. So definitely something to consider.
That's great. Yeah, I'll add it to my CV.
Yes. Yeah, hey, there you go. Perfect. So
will be calling me tomorrow.
Yeah, there you go. So you might get more eyes in your CV now. So I see Camille is right beside you. So is there a couple going on, or is it like just co-workers working at the same place? What's going on here?
Yeah, that got a little bit deeper than.
Okay. Oh, we'll keep it a secret. Although this is live, just keep it.
Yeah, are we live?
Yeah.
Oh no!
Oh, but...
We didn't realize this was going public.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, guys. So, Camilla, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, right? Like, just tell us how you got into gaming, and you're one of the writer of the of Joon Shining, also, right? So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
So we co-wrote the script, Angus and I, and he got me involved because he was involved in the music. And I think Al had approached him in the past about some story questions. And up until now, we've been doing co-writing screenplays. So from about 2017 onwards, we were really focused on that. But this just seemed like a really cool chance to get something made, because I don't know if you know, but screenplays take on average about 10 years in the making, from sort of writing to production. So this was just an amazing opportunity to actually see our work realized. And I think that was one of the most fun parts of the project, to see the characters come to life and Al's vision combined with our vision, and just the amazing collaboration that came out of that.
That is very cool. I've got a friend, she's called Purple Haze, and she interviewed the writer of Tomb Raider, the latest release, and she talks about how much work it takes, to do it, and like you write a lot of stuff, but sometimes not all the story can be put in because of the pieces and stuff, and so you have to make sure that the story still makes sense even if you remove some of it, and it's just an interesting thing. Like, everybody making the game has such an important part of it, so it's very cool to see you co-writing with Angus on this, and this story is pretty silly, and I love it. Just with the you have to save dodos, and it's something that we'll talk about a little bit later, because it's a really interesting story. But thanks for sharing that, for sure.
Nope.
So my next question that I have here, and it's something that I was a little bit confused, and maybe you guys can help me out. So I know that Al is part of Orchid of Redemption, right? It's your developing team. But also I've noticed that the game has been published by Lamplight Forest. But Lamplight Forest is also in a development team. And so I'm not sure. Can you explain a little bit about both companies, how they are with the game?
Yeah, sure. This is something that people tend to ask me pretty early on. It's kind of just it's sort of the same thing. Like, there's only one company, which is Lamplight.
Oh,
okay.
And Orchid of Redemption is basically kind of like a label, like under Lamplight Forest, but it's all the same thing. It's all just kind of like me developing projects and then getting people on board to work with me. Okay. The reason that I split it off into two was basically because of the whole Palace of Vines story that I just told you, where Palace of Vines is quite a big game, and I've certainly developed other projects on a similar scale. But because I had so much trouble getting those picked up, I was like, okay, well, for my own sanity and to kind of delineate from the bigger projects and the smaller self-published things, I'm just going to split this off into two. So that's Lamplight Forest is sort of for the bigger stuff. Orchid of Redemption is for the smaller stuff and self-published stuff. But business-wise, it's kind of the same thing. But it also doesn't hurt, like on Steam or whatever, to have a publisher name there that's different from the developer name. Like, it makes you kind of look more legit.
Yeah.
Which was not my reason for doing it, but it's kind of like a bit of a bonus.
I love it. It's kind of like a clean slate of the bigger game coming out. You've got this big label, and we might be seeing other big games coming out from Lamplight Forest. So That's cool. Now that clears it off, because I like making a story in my head. Like I was like, oh, Angus and Camilla is from Lamplight Forest, and you talk to Al to get into Orchid of Redemption. But yeah, that's just a big screenwriting thing that I put in my head. But and I like the story though. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the game now. Joon Shining. Very exciting. I gotta say thank you to my partner in crime, Gladiator, for bringing the developer here. Thank you for that, Gladiator. And I've heard about the game even before the interview, and I was very curious about it because it is a curious game. It's very, very unique, and let me tell you what's unique about it. It's an adventure game with a twist. You actually control an egg like a golf ball. So, can you guys talk to me a little bit about the game and what it's about?
That's such a broad way to start. So the best way to start, I think, is to say how the game started. Like I said, it was originally called Mage Drops, and it was sort of a 2D golf platformer. And I definitely had this sort of vague, even though I wasn't directly influenced by it or trying to emulate it, I have this vague memory. And if, people often ask what's your inspiration for making whatever game. And I have this vague memory of this game that was like on TIG Source or, like one of those kind of indie forums. And I never played it, but it was like a platformer where you actually controlled a character and you were mini golfing around kind of puzzle platforming at the same time. And I think it was pretty obscure. I mean, I could be wrong because I like I said, I can't even remember what it was called. But that was definitely sort of part of the influence of going, well, I've seen this kind of thing and I know it could be really cool. And there's a few little gimmicks in the game which were directly influenced by, at least by my memory of that. Because I probably only ever saw like 1 minute of its gameplay or something, but it kind of, stuck in my subconscious. So the interesting thing is that what is unique about the game, which is kind of the way that the magic works, which in its most basic sense is that you can control the physics of the ball while it's in the air. So while most golf games are like have that meter where you charge up your shot and then hit it like that, instead of doing that, we just kind of aim and hit. But once you've hit the ball, you can break in the air or you can make it keep rolling. And the way that came about was sort of just a very organic part of the development process where I was prototyping it and I had, some basic platforms and whatever, just like white box stuff. And trying to have an accurate shot where the ball didn't just keep rolling off the edge or whatever was too difficult. And I was grappling with, friction and physics and whatever. And I couldn't find a simple solution. So I was like, I've kind of got this philosophy of like, if a thought comes and it's a simple solution, then I'll just do that rather than trying to grapple with something that I don't understand. And so the simplest solution I could think of in the moment was I just add brakes, So
yeah.
that's solved. So I just kind of put in brakes, and then the releasing the friction thing, kind of seemed a natural extension of that. And and then I thought, then eventually it sort of became contextualized in, okay, well let's make the main character a magic person, so that there's context for why those breaks exist, and then a lot of other stuff kind of unfolded from there. But that was a much longer process in figuring out who Joon was and why they were doing all this stuff, and that of course segues into the great work that Angus and Camilla did to give this whole kind of world a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. So we've got the brake and the acceleration abilities, and you might think, oh well, you can control the ball, it can be so easy. But Gladiator will be talking about some stuff about the game later on, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But first, let's just talk a little bit more about the idea of the game. it's so unique. Just well, I guess we kind of already talked about it. Now that I'm thinking about it. So the golf section was part of like a game idea that you stole in the past. No, just kidding. But no, you got the idea from an older game that you think you played, which is very interesting, right? Because there was so many crazy ideas back then, like on the Commodore 64 or all of these old consoles that never really fleshed out. So it's cool to see these ideas coming back out like this. So as you can see in the trailer, you can see that there's like some cool mechanics, like you can burn obstacles, or you can fly through magic rings to have like a speed boost and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about these mechanics and what other mechanics that you've implemented in the game?
Yeah, I mean, we did end up with a lot of different mechanics, which a lot of people have sort of commented that they really enjoy. That you start playing the game in the first few minutes and sort of think it's one thing, and then one mechanic after another unfolds, and eventually, I mean, I've never counted them all up, but there's really like a ton, but again, that was a pretty natural process of just like having played decades of games, you just get that kind of encyclopedia of game mechanics in your mind, and just think about what could work for something like this. And because it's like a hybrid golf sort of platformer, basically any mechanic that you've ever seen in a platform game, you could at least I could at least try out in this and see if it worked, and in most cases they did work. So a lot of it is directly lifted from from Nintendo games or sort of any other platform games, but also they're kind of mechanical explorations. Like as a gameplay programmer and a gameplay designer, it's just like, well, we can have bouncing things, we can have whatever, like elemental things like fire and wind and stuff like that. And a lot of it is just thinking about in terms of physics, of like, how can we use physics to affect the movement of this thing? Yeah, but what I think is really interesting, and what I think like people never really ask about, but whenever I think about it as a game designer, I'm like, I think this is kind of ingenious, but it's so easy to miss, is the shift button. So anything that has the ring symbol on it, you can control with the shift button. And that was like, that idea directly came from pinball. So I was thinking about, like on a physical pinball table, you've just got that one button that does everything that can be manipulated on the pinball table can be controlled with this one button. So I was like, well, that's kind of like a genius minimalist design that makes pinball work. That's kind of one of the reasons that pinball endures, is because there's something minimalist about its interface. So I really like that, and that, like, all through the game, that concept continues to get explored in different ways. Like the shift key does, like 100 different things throughout the course of the game. Yeah, and it's kind of like just implemented in such a simple way that I think it's easy to miss how well it works. And I found it actually works so well, I started implementing it into other games that I'm working on, stuff that we haven't released yet, because it's so flexible. There's so much you can do with it. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm most sort of proud of in the game's design.
Hey, Joe, you still here?
Oh man, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I was muted. Oh, sorry. Okay, so yeah, I was saying that it's cool because so yeah, it's nice having a lot of tutorials, but it's not. It's nice to have a lot of mechanics, but that's the thing, right? Like to make sure that people know that that they exist, it's good to have tutorials to make sure that they're all being used efficiently. That's what I was saying while I was muted. But that's
for
super
sure.
cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the soundtrack. So when I was playing, I actually had people, Rebellica specifically, who is part of the community. She said that the she really enjoyed the soundtrack, and she said that it was very calm. I had like a lot of positive reaction basically to the soundtrack. So
Yay.
yeah, there you go. Angus, can you tell us what kind of vision you had when you decided to have this type of soundtrack? Or, you and Al maybe can talk about how you implemented this soundtrack in the game.
Well, the implementation is probably more, maybe, yeah. I think the thing about how we came up with it, what Al was talking about, the way that you use the shift key to sort of make the ball slow down or bounce off things or open doors or something, is you don't have a whole lot of control once you've set the ball in motion. You can only sort of manipulate how it bounces or where it falls and things like that. So it's quite simple, and in this way I think it's got this sort of peacefulness about it. You've got this, you just sit there, you've got to like focus on how you're aiming the ball, so you need a lot of a sort of headspace to be able to do that. And imagine the trajectory it's going to do and where you're going to press shift or something to manipulate its journey. And so from the outset, Al said that he was interested in developing this kind of almost a peaceful or tranquil game where you can think clearly, like the emphasis of it isn't to have things attacking you all the time, that you're sort of freaking out and just mashing the keys trying to like kill whatever it is, zombies or whatever that's attacking you, but more that you have the headspace to sort of plan your how you're going to shoot the egg. And so I wanted the music to, of course, Al wanted the music to respond to that as well. But so the music had to sort of cultivate that headspace, that sort of relaxed thing, and ability to focus. So actually, there's sort of two types of music. When you finish a section, you get this like orchestral music, and it's or a band or something like that, and it's quite there's a lot going on. It's quite exciting, dramatic, whatever. So that's when you hatch your dodo. But for most of the gameplay, it's very ambient, I'd say. For example, I took some inspiration from minimalist composers like Steve Reich, and also who's the guy that did music for airports?
Airports.
Yeah. Movie Airport.
Well, I didn't do it in the airport, but
yeah.
Anyway, sort of minimal music ideas, and also some research. I was really interested in, like, as a composer, generally interested in the way that, and actually from Palace of Vines, that other game, how our brains sort of react to music and what it is we're listening to, why we get affected by music. And there are things like rhythms, brain states, theta and beta and so on, different tempi and different complexities of music and different kinds of sounds as well, like high-pitched sounds versus low-pitched sounds, and how they affect the brain and cultivate a sense of calm or something like that. And so in the music, in this ambient music, when you're actually playing the game, when you haven't completed a section, there's all kinds of like creepy mind manipulation sort of stuff going on for everyone's benefit, of course. But you could say, I'm not a scientist, or a spy or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm really, it's very it's just my own sort of version of that stuff. But there are there's really high frequencies at certain points that drift in just to like stimulate that part of your mind. And there's also a lot of like slower undulating sounds that come and go. And one of the challenges with this game was then to make that ambient sound connect with the orchestral pieces that come in, and sort of that they evolve out of it, that it's not some different music like a jingle that suddenly plays. There you go. And to keep that sort of organic connection between everything.
I like that. I like that you did some studies at the same time, making the music, which actually requires a lot more work, right? So that's amazing. The way that you did that, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like my favorite video game composer, which is David Wise from Donkey Kong Country. He his song Sticker Brush Symphony he made that like in one of the most frustrating level in the game, and he was asked to do a calm piece because the game was like, that part was so frustrating that he wanted the players to like have like a calm sense, so that they wouldn't rage quit or anything. So I feel like the fact that the game like has this calm music can probably help the frustration from some of these parts that are hard, which we'll get a little bit later on again with Gladiator talking about it. But that's amazing. I really like to hear that. And by the way, guys, people in the chat who's listening, the soundtrack is actually available on Steam if you're ever interested in giving a look. And Crystal Surah, thank you so very much for subscribing. Really appreciate that. But yeah, the soundtrack is currently available in the Steam store if you want to have a listen, if you're into these kind of calm excuse me, type of music. So definitely have a look.
It's on Bandcamp as well if you want to check it there. If you've got a Bandcamp.
I love Bandcamp. Bandcamp is where I buy all my music, so I'll definitely check it out.
Let me get the link for it.
Yeah. What did you say, Gladiator? What's the name for it?
No, I'm gonna find a link for it.
Oh, the link. Perfect. Yeah, you can put it in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, because Steam, when you want to extract these songs, it's so complicated. But with Bandcamp, you can just like download it with a link, and that's what I like about it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the story now. We've got a question for you also, Camilla, and so we're wondering, do you normally think of the plot first or the character first when you do your story? Can you describe the process when you started co-writing for Joon Shining?
So I think the thing that was different from other stuff we worked on was that so much of it was created already. That there was a world, there was a character, there was a magician. I think we knew that the character who became Joon was going to be this mage, and we had this mechanic, right? And so we were trying to construct a story around it. And Angus thought that maybe we could turn the ball into an egg. And he was thinking like it could be a chicken egg, it could be like
Genius, right?
Because everyone loves a good chicken story and chicken joke. And then I guess we just thought, well, what else could it be? We're just like brainstorming, and we thought, could it be a dinosaur? Could it be something a bit cuter, a bit less destructive? We really like the idea of the dodo because it's kind of one of those victims of history, but actually it represents the serenity that Al was after. They were a really peaceful species who never learned to fly because they didn't have any predators. And so, unfortunately, their sort of a welcoming approach to the colonizers in the 17th, 16th, 17th century didn't really go very well for them. But we were quite keen on kind of making them our heroes and showing that there was like a different way of living that we might have forgotten about in our modern times. Yeah.
So Granite is asking, did the story come before the egg? So
The chicken or the egg.
a good one. Oh my gosh. So yeah, no, it's interesting though, because the dodo, it's instinct. So like, it's funny that in the story that they're trying to save the dodo, and we're kind of like responsible if we fail our mission. Like we're kind of responsible in extincting these dodos. So it's a lot of pressure, but I love it. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and put on the mic to Gladiator. He has some nice and interesting question for you guys also. But yeah, before I leave, I just want to say again, thank you. I'm not gonna leave, but I just mean like before I lend it to Gladiator again. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. It's very interesting, and yeah, looking forward to learn more about it. So take it away, Gladiator.
Oh, sure. So as we talk about Joon Shining, so the game, wait, hold on, let me just see. So the game launched in February. So have you been getting some really great feedback so far for the game since its release?
Well, feedback has been kind of steady since early access. So I think it was maybe a year that it was in early access before the full release. So we've had kind of like waves of feedback coming in during that process. And obviously there's like people who are engaged in playing things that are in early access are interested in giving feedback in a different way, because they're like early adopters. There's kind of like a certain pride in playing something that they know is sort of unfinished, and that they might have particular insights that like the average gamer doesn't have because they're early adopters. So that was good. So we definitely made some big changes based on some of that feedback. And a lot of the feedback along the way was about the game's difficulty, and that's definitely been the biggest thing about this game. The difficulty just isn't for everyone, and I even got to the point of just saying to people up front, like, give it a go. It's a great game. It's definitely worth your time, but you've got to roll with it. Like the satisfaction comes from the high skill ceiling, and depending on like if someone just plays a lot of sort of AAA games or a lot of games where those hard edges are sanded off, they're just not going to have the patience for it, because they're used to games just kind of holding their hand. And it's just so challenging, I think there's even Miyamoto has some famous quote about like the getting any game's difficulty right is one of the hardest things.
Yes.
So that's been a kind of a consistent challenge, but once we got everything together and Angus and Camilla's wonderful work in there, and I would say also Daniel, who's not here today obviously, but he was the environment artist. So through early access I kind of did all the environments myself to a rough degree, and eventually I was able to get Daniel on board, who just went back through the whole game and made everything look really beautiful. So his work was also a huge factor in like, oh, now this looks like a real game, once we had the music plus the story plus the environments. That was kind of the real turning point for me of when that all came together. And obviously that's how it was when it got released, the final release. So that's when we started to sort of get that real feedback, and that was really great. And then we had people grappling with the experience of like, this game is so difficult, but the atmosphere is so serene, and like people were kind of like, is that intentional? And it was like, we've been talking about that for a long time, like between the three of us in particular. And it was just really interesting people were almost having their own internal struggles about, I don't know, how to reconcile those two things, like the difficulty and the calmness. And I think that's the game's real sweet spot. And I hope, my hope is that like, the game just sort of little by little finds its kind of niche audience where people sort of understand the value of that kind of sweet spot, which is like, I think there's a lot of those kind of cute games or, Stardew Valley inspired things, or, lots of different indie areas where it's like, let's give people a slower paced, sort of calm, serene experience. but there's no edge to it. It's really just that kind of wholesome game movement and whatever, which I think is great to have more games that are not centered around violence or around super intense experiences. But I think you've got to have sort of kind of edge or high skill ceiling at the same time. So that's that's the sweet spot that I feel like we did hit very well.
That's awesome. I mean, for sure. I mean, one of the positive feedbacks that I had to give is how great the game performed on the Steam Deck. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But speaking of feedback, like, have you been getting stuff up? People asking, is there anything else planned for Joon Shining? Like, will there be more patches coming soon? More content?
We definitely haven't planned anything like downloadable content in terms of like a significant thing. And I would say that at present, until we find that niche, the game isn't popular enough for us to justify creating like an actual DLC kind of pack.
Mm-hmm.
But this might be an interesting question to ask Angus and Camilla, because what happened, which was not my initiative at all, was the way that the story actually ends. So do you guys have anything to say about the two endings that you created?
Indeed, there are two endings. Yeah.
The secret ending.
Yeah, there's a secret ending. You can say the ultra challenge ending as well.
Yeah.
Has anyone in the chat actually gotten to the end? In fact, has anyone in the whole world gotten to the end?
Maybe
I don't know.
I hope you put an achievement for it, right? Just so you can know yourself.
Based on the Steam, if I'm seeing the Steam achievements correctly, I don't think anyone has gotten all 100 droplets.
I gotta say it's very difficult. Like, I do have it on the hardest difficulty, so it doesn't help. But I am trying.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I was wondering that, Gladiator, have you played it on the highest level?
Well, I tried in the beginning, but I was struggling a lot, so I decided I had to switch to easy, and easy was going smoothly until I decided to change to tourist mode.
Uh-huh.
But it is quite challenging, but I really enjoy it. I like the challenge for sure.
Yes, the challenge is very fun.
Yeah, so if anyone ever gets to the end, then we'll tell you what we have planned for Joon Shining.
Yeah, basically that.
So, oh wow, so that's probably is a teaser then.
You hear it here, folks.
Okay, Mason getting all the trophies. Okay, yeah. Getting all the trophies it's a super challenge.
Well, Ninja, hopefully you're the first one to get it.
Now, like, I feel really inclined to do it for sure. Like, oh my gosh, now that you mentioned that, yeah.
One of the trophies is all gold ranks in all of the levels, and that's definitely the most difficult thing to achieve.
The hardest thing that I'm having right now in the hardest difficulty is the time attacks. For some reason, like, I don't know how to do them. Like, I think you have to be super fast, right? Like, I really struggle with the time attack, especially.
Oh, you mean getting fast enough time to get gold?
Yeah, I think. Oh, maybe I'm mistaken. But you have a score, right? Like you can get like S score or something like that. I thought it was related to the time that you have to do that. That one. So.
So there's both time and stroke count. So you need to get par on, but you also need to get 80% time or better.
Yeah, that's what I struggle with. The score, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
on.
Time is tricky too.
Oh.
So anyway, that was the reason that I threw that to Angus and Camilla, is because in both endings of the game there is a bit of this suggestion of like, well, maybe what's going to happen next. Like, they conclude really nicely, but there's also this suggestion of that some other might be leading to something else. And that was interesting to me because we never had a sort of a conversation between us of like, can we suggest a sequel or something? They just kind of wrote the conclusion. I was like, oh, so is this like suggesting a sequel? And they're like, maybe. So that was really nice. And one of the other interesting things is that maybe this is the universe telling me something, is that 2 separate reviews, once the game came out, accidentally called the game Joon Rising. And I was like, oh, that's for a sequel. So that's another thing. That was just another kind of like message that I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to that. That's cool. So Joon Rising could be the sequel.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I mean, since we're on the topic of difficulty, so as Ninja is on the hardest difficulty because that's the only way he play any game these days. Do you have any tips for someone who would like to complete the game, understanding? Oh, but also on top of it, is there like different difficulties as well? And can you tell us the difference between the modes?
Yeah, I mean, my instinct is to say that like normal difficulty is the way that the game should be played, but I don't want to put people off playing it in easy. So again, it was like the early access process where we found that there was too many people just being put off by the difficulty. So so that's why we put in easy mode, because of that feedback. But easy mode isn't that much easier, really. It's almost a bit of a psychological thing where it's easier to get a gold rank because it just allows you to take more shots. Like it raises the par level and it raises the timer, so that it's easier to get gold. But there's only like a minimal amount of differences in the actual level layouts because there's so many levels, and I was doing all the level design myself. I couldn't like make an extra easy level for all 100 levels because then I would be making 200 levels instead. So I just made these kind of minimal changes in each level just to make them all a little bit easier. But really, the moment-to-moment stuff of how you're controlling the physics and all the other tricks you're doing are basically the same in easy mode or hard mode. So the core gameplay is not that much easier anyway. And what I'm hoping, like, if you start the game on easy mode or on tourist mode, you can still switch to hard mode at any time. Like, you're not locked into easy mode after that. And so what I'm hoping is that people will, if they start on easy mode or tourist mode, that they ramp themselves up into kind of normal mode. And I think, no, I think, maybe you can finish everything on easy mode.
I like that. I like that it's kind of like, like a replayability feature, right? Like you do them on easy, and if you feel like you're ready for it, you do it back on normal mode. If you want some more, then, so on and so forth. I like that idea.
Yeah. Actually, I remember what it is now is that if you're going for golds, you can't get gold in easy mode. That's what it is.
Okay.
That's what I used to try and entice players to like play it in normal mode.
All right. So that's a challenge. But so let's just say for someone who never played the game, then how long would it actually take them to finish it?
It's really hard for me to say. As a developer, your concept of how hard things are and how long they take gets completely skewed because you're like, oh, this is pretty easy, and you to someone else and they're like, no, it's not. So my estimate has basically generally been what I say to people is it's probably like 20 hours of gameplay.
Okay.
And that's probably like going for a bunch of the collectibles, like maybe not even all the collectibles, but it's like maybe if you just played the game from start to finish without trying to collect stuff or get gold ranks, it's probably maybe 15 hours or so. But there's definitely like 20 plus if you're trying to collect stuff and get good ranks and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course, someone like of course when it comes to achievements as well. I mean, I think someone asked you if you can add achievements to the game, and then you asked if there was enough interest you would add some. And then right now you have about 12 achievements for the game with some really nice artwork, by the way. Can you talk about what type of achievements you included in the game?
Yeah, so I wasn't really interested in achievements at first because as a player I don't go for achievements. I don't try for achievements. So I was like, I don't really care about it. But then a few people asked, and I was like, okay, well, I'm open to it as a developer, but why would it matter to me? Like, what would make an achievement meaningful to me to give as a challenge to give people? Because you see, those kind of jokes going around in the game industry of like, you take one step in the game and it gives you the one step achievement, or you press the jump button and it gives you the jump button achievement, and there are some games which are designed like that, like, achievement farming, just that give you achievements for doing basically nothing. So I thought, well, how can I make that meaningful? And, it's kind of a puzzle rich and a challenge rich game. So my rule that I created for myself was basically anything, like any achievement that the players get has to be something that they wouldn't just get by playing through the game normally. So for example, if they play through the first chapter, then I'm not going to give them achievement for like, you completed the first chapter, like because it's something that they would do anyway. It's not a special thing. So even though the achievements aren't like really far out kind of puzzles or challenges, which I would have loved to do, by the way, but that was like a scope thing. I didn't want to like blow my scope out by like making these extra like things that I had to create. But yeah, I did sort of stick to that rule of like nothing that the player would normally do, like would do by default, is going to be an achievement. It has to be something that's special. So for example, getting all the gold ranks or getting all the droplets and stuff like that. Yeah, and they're all very worthy challenges.
Yeah, of course. But so I'm like, for me, I love to collect achievements because achievements helps me keep going, I guess, to keep either like if I went past a level or if I missed something, it makes me go back and like challenge myself again. And like you said, there's achievements in there, and then of course, if you complete everything, you get the secret ending that people entice. So that's another good reason why people should get achievements as well, to get that to find out what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to get all the achievements to get the secret ending, but one of the achievements is linked to the secret ending.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's true. But you do have to get all the droplets.
Yeah.
So that's sort of an achievement in itself, is just collecting the droplets.
Yeah. But that is also literally one of the achievements as well.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of next, so what is next for Orchard of Redemption? So are you going to continue to still work on Joon Shining, or is there another project that seems to be in the work?
So in terms of what the three of us are talking about next, because I'm the kind of person who has a lot of things in development at all times. So I have like a ton of projects on the back burner. I've been pitching a few different ones. So one of my favorite ones at the moment is a digital card game that I've been working on, which I haven't announced anything about publicly, but it's coming along very quickly, and it's a very unique card. So it's a card game with no combat. That's basically all about it's all about calling in heroes, from your card deck, and using those heroes to deal with challenges in the landscape. So it's all about journeying through landscapes and magic and secrets rather than combat, which is is really unique, and it's a really special game. But in terms of what the three of us have been talking about, the Lifetime, which is the game that I mentioned earlier that I took to PAX, which is a sort of a time-based puzzle platformer. We have so that's kind of, I've been developing that prototype for a while, and have obviously played it with the public and shown it around a bit. It was another kind of like Joon Shining. It started as the most minimalist idea that I could possibly think of, and then grew into something sort of more interesting from there. So we've talked about basically the story of that and how the music is potentially going to work. I don't know if Angus, can you say anything about the music, or is it sort of too early? Because we've had a few interesting conversations about that.
Yeah, like only really at this point that it is a much faster paced, like it's a paced game. It has a pace, whereas Joon Shining is really tranquil and ambient, but the Lifetime is not that at all. So, and time in the title refers to that as well. And the gameplay it's a lot about time, but Al's got some sneaky sort of ideas about it where you can sort of store it up, and it's almost like time becomes a commodity or something. Like you can get time, add it, and you can lose it as well, and things like that. So it can be intriguing if the music can have elements of that as well, that it's sort of almost like you can rewind it or you can go forwards and things like that. Anyway, we'll explore those kind of ideas, but it's in general the sort of aesthetic of it would be that it's going to have beats and it'd be more rhythmical than Joon Shining's score.
If I'm not mistaken, the Lifetime right now is on Steam, right? You can wishlist it and follow it for people who are interested in the game. Yes, yep. You can check it out on Steam. There's a early sort of work in progress trailer there, and some screenshots and whatever. And we have a bit of like a early kind of synopsis of the game. But yeah, even in work in progress format, you can see the pace of the game, and definitely kind of a stark contrast to Joon Shining. There's a lot of interesting kind of puzzle platform elements in there. There's a lot of, I've actually discovered retroactively, there's a lot of kind of Wario style gameplay in there. And I had never played any of the Wario games, but while I've been researching this game, and because people have been talking about the Wario games more because they've been re-released on the Switch Online stuff. So that's been really interesting for me to discover. In a bunch of those earlier Wario games, there's that time mechanic where you get a certain way through the game and you hit one of these switches, and then suddenly the timer starts and you've got to race back to the start of the level, but the level has also kind of changed its configuration. So definitely some of those ideas, now that I know that they sort of already exist, I can kind of like look at what is the way that the Wario games did it well and sort of explore that. And I think Pizza Tower is another reason why the Wario games have been... I love that.
Yeah. So because Pizza Tower is basically a Wario-inspired game, people have been talking about the Wario games more because they're exploring like, where did this Pizza Tower game come from? And I think Pizza Tower also has some of those time-based challenges, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's another avenue to explore. But the Lifetime has a ton of stuff. I mean, there's even some Kid Icarus inspired levels in there. Where you kind of like, it's got screen wrap like Kid Icarus. Like if you go out the right side of the screen, you come out on the left, and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's I love kind of digging through game history and exploring all those little kind of mechanics.
Awesome. So I actually have one more question, and I think this might be a question a lot of us might ask, because, for example, so now that Joon Shining is out and out of early access, is finally launched, there are people, a lot of gamers out there who don't have access to PC. So, is there plans also to try to bring this game on like other platforms as well?
Yeah, it would be great to do that. I think the short answer is that I've never ported anything myself. And obviously there's kind of like time and cost involved with doing that. So I think I would love to see it initially on the Switch. I think it just would be a good fit for the Switch. But it would basically be a matter of connecting with a publisher who wanted to help get the game onto other platforms, I think. I think without some kind of support or some kind of like connection like that to do the porting, it's not something that we can just easily do ourselves for fun, because we want to see it on there. I mean, in an ideal world, absolutely, if I could click my fingers and have it on all 3 consoles, then I would. But the resources to do it, I mean, we'll see. Again, I just my hope is that over the long term, the game kind of finds its like niche audience, and allows us to do that.
Okay. Well, hopefully you have that opportunity.
Would love that. Would love that, because I have a potato computer. Thankfully, everything is working well with the interviews, but I always need, especially games that requires a lot of skill. I always need that frames per second, right? Like I need that good frame to get these precise movements and all of that. So definitely, when I hear about a game coming on console, it definitely brings my heart pretty warm, just because I can get these skills to the max. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to the lifetime. I've just looked some previews, and it's definitely up my alley. I really love 2D platformers, especially. People know that. So I'll definitely keep an eye. I'm following it, and maybe after, when it comes out, maybe we can do another interview and talk a little bit about the release, or if you guys end up doing a Kickstarter, or a FundMe for it, or if you need any help, definitely let me know, and we can do something about it for sure.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. So that's all the questions that we had for today. Gladiator, thank you very much for the help. I needed it because I think we needed each other, right? Because we both are, did a really long trip, and but we did pretty well. So thank you, Gladiator, for that.
No problem.
So before we end it, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add before that you'd like to mention before we end this interview?
You guys have anything you'd like to say?
No, we're just looking forward to someone who actually finishes it.
I can't believe it. For sure. We'll look it up. I think that gives me like the I want to finish it now, because I love being the first at things. So definitely I'll keep a lookout. But thank you guys again so much for taking some time on this Sunday night, Monday morning. Looking forward to see what else you got in the work. But until then, thanks again, and have yourself a wonderful rest of the day, guys. And just one last thing definitely, Al. Really appreciate that. Just want to say a little bit something to the chat. So I'll be out of the iTai show for about 4 weeks. We'll be back after 4 weeks, but we're taking a small break. Just to let you guys know. So Joon Shining was the last interview. We wanted something big, so here we are with the developers. But again, just to let you know, 4 weeks time we'll be out of iTai's interview, but we'll be back. All right, guys. So thank you very much, and have yourself a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.